When a new student arrives for their first voice training lesson, they often come in search of answers to questions about their vocal identity. The process of discovery is akin to playing the party game 20 Questions, where the group asks the answerer a series of questions in order to deduce who or what they are. In my experience, the students' answers to my questions confirm that their mind is cluttered with bits and pieces of dubious information which they have collected over time. Am I a high voice or a low voice? A bright voice or a dark one? A light voice or a heavy one? All these combine into one simple question. Will someone tell me what I am, vocally speaking? On today's episode of the Voice Science Podcast, let's talk about voice classifications, what they are for, how to use them, and most importantly, when not to. This episode was written by Timothy Wilds. Let's get going. Before we commence, allow me a moment to explain the motivation around today's topic. Like many of the pieces I write for Voci, today's topic flows straight from the training studio. Many of the beginning or continuing amateur singers I have assisted are unaware that they are limiting their vocal potential because they are desperate for a label. It is as if they believe their vocal mechanism has a tag on it, indicating either high or low. This notion implies that the scope of a singer's voice is predetermined at birth. To a degree, there is a measure of truth to that statement. Every voice is unique due to one's biological sex. The size of one's body, specifically the anatomical parts that provide the power, source, and filter components, are unique to each person. However, at the same time, if you were to exactly measure the vocal mechanisms of two singers, say two sopranos, you would find the similarity significant. It is fair to say that the average singer, not the Mariah Careys and Freddie Mercurys of the world, has a uniquely common voice, totally one of a kind, and absolutely basic. I realize that last phrase may land with a thud, but hear me out. When I say common or basic, I am not judging the quality of a person's singing. I am directing our attention to what is widely available and accessible. In other words, common or basic to every singer. So, to all the questions I cited at the beginning of this piece, the answer is yes. You can sing high and low, bright and dark, light and heavy. Among all these dualities, you may naturally lean one way or another, but the truth is you are capable of all of these. This is why one should be leery of clinging to a label, or as we will now move on to discuss, vocal classifications or voice types. The system of designation known as voice classifications or voice type was a European or Western music solution to a developing issue. As art music across Europe evolved, so did the need for words to explain how music was expanding. As vocal music grew from monody, a single melodic line with a single voice, to a group of singers divided into different parts. The vocal parts were given the names soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, SATB, to represent the four parts moving from highest to lowest. As a rule, these four names for the standard four vocal parts among most mixed choral scores indicate the general vicinity of the vocal range, and nothing more. On average, the vocal ranges for choral singers are as follows: soprano, C4 to A5, alto, F3 to E5, tenor, B2 to A4, bass, F2 to E4. It is worth noting that all of these measure just under 2 octaves, a serviceable span that amateur singers can attain with some training. With the arrival of early opera at the turn of the 17th century, composers needed a way of distinguishing between the various characters. The operatic world opted for the convenience of the already existing designations found in choral compositions, the standard SATB. This served for a time, but as the genre evolved over the next 2 centuries, it became necessary to think bigger than the 4 voice types. Why? Because the designations needed to convey more than just a vocal range. The standard 4 voice parts were subdivided. Soprano and alto became soprano, mezzo-soprano, and contralto. Tenor and bass converted to a countertenor, male alto, tenor, baritone, and bass. The vocal ranges for operatic singers are larger, usually 2 to 2.5 octaves, demanding skills beyond that of a standard SATB chorister. In addition to an expanded range, now singers' voices would be considered in terms of the weight, the heaviness or lightness, color and timbre, the darkness or the brightness, agility, the ability to sing florid writing as in a coloratura, and tessitura, the location of the most comfortable region of the overall range. So, in addition to an expanded vocal range, the operatic singer is now identified in relation to these additional technique and sound quality requisites. These add-ons serve to flesh out a character's raison d'être, age, economic level, standing in society, and emotional character. This idea of typing a character is a nod to the mid-16th century movement out of northern Italian theater known as commedia dell'arte, where the stock characters are archetypal, representing all strata of human society. They show up time and time again in formulaic plots, masked, costumed, and mannered so specifically as to cement into the viewer's consciousness. Opera was infected by this tradition, but instead of typing by way of visual cues, it accomplished it via the voice. The commedia dell'arte model was easily integrated into operas, in particular, comedic plots. Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro being a prime example. So far, we have discovered that the use of voice classifications or voice types in the world of classical singing, namely choral music, solo vocal music, and opera, is somewhat unavoidable given how deeply it is woven into the evolution of these genres. Just remember, using the language of voice classification and voice type varies with context. Given my penchant for illustration, I can't resist comparing the use of SATB in the choral and operatic worlds to wine. The SATB designations on a choral score are comparable to the house wine offerings during happy hour at a middle range establishment. One may pick from 4 standard options: a sparkling, a white, a rosé, or a red wine, all of them checking the following boxes. It's wine, it's affordable, around $7 to $10 a glass, and it's drinkable, and most likely, it's forgettable. In a choral context, the SATB designations convey rather generic information. When we encounter SATB designations in the world of opera, imagine yourself in an upscale boutique wine shop. You are not there to buy a basic white house blend in a box. You want a Chardonnay, not American, French. Made from 100% Chardonnay grapes grown in the exceptional terroir of the Burgundy region. May I suggest a 2022 Domaine La Roche-le-Clos Chablis Grand Cru at only $175 a bottle. Clearly, our trip to the wine boutique reveals we are in the market for a curated wine experience. At the risk of overstressing the point, context is everything when using voice classification. When applied to choral music, it carries limited meaning. In operatic repertoire, the classification, often amended with modifiers, for example, a dramatic coloratura soprano describes a particular voice type for which a composer wrote with specificity. The one place voice classifications are unnecessary, as well as confusing, is in the world of contemporary commercial music, CCM. That is, all types of singing apart from the European/Western choral, vocal, and operatic tradition. In the world of pop, rock, folk, country, R&B, jazz, etc., we have little use for delineations in the classical voice classification and type system. There are many reasons for this, a discussion of which would demand a podcast of its own. In short, the fundamental reason lies in the fact that CCM singing and all forms of classical singing thrive in entirely different contexts and pursue a whole host of diverging vocal, expressive, and presentational goals. The voice classifications very much at home in classical singing, when applied to CCM, can feel restrictive. If singing pop and rock is more of your jam, I recommend this approach. I'm a singer. I can sing low, mid, and high in a variety of qualities. That is an approach that promotes freedom and exploration. As we bring today's episode to a close, I want to urge you to be cautious if you're prone to any of the following. Don't draw conclusions about your singing voice based on the pitch level during speech. Adult speech levels are naturally low in pitch frequency. For someone assigned female at birth, the range hovers between E3 to C4, a span of less than an octave, with A3 being the median. The range for someone assigned male at birth is approximately 1 octave lower. It is important to recognize that the average adult's speech range is only 10 to 25% of the potential singing range. Therefore, it should not be interpreted as an indicator of one's vocal range. What may seem intuitive and familiar in terms of one's speech and singing habits and patterns should not be interpreted as the final word as to what is vocally possible. The vocal mechanism is amazingly flexible and capable of more than you may think. This is precisely why working with a capable voice trainer can make all the difference. As I like to say, you have the hardware. Let's download some software and start discovering what you can do. Be cautious when using any app that promises to determine your vocal range simply by singing a song. These can be a faulty measure due to the high level of variables that will muddy the results. For example, the song you sang for the app, did you pitch it high, medium, or low? This will strongly influence the outcome. At best, the apps only report on what you recorded at one particular moment in time and should not be taken as evidence of what one is ultimately able to do. I hope this conversation has been enlightening and will help you avoid the pitfall of limiting your vocal potential resulting from a voice classification or a voice type label. If you're ready to start exploring the full scope of what your voice can do, our free 365 Days of Voice Science email series is a great place to begin. One short practical lesson delivered daily to help you sing smarter all year long. Sign up at voicescience.org/free. Until next time, keep singing smart.